are able to glow in the dark. And that's how you know these are real scorpions, everybody.
If you saw my last video about rock flipping, you know this is the same exact way it ended. Because I had found scorpions on one of the last objects and made them glow in the dark. Which, it's kind of poetic in a way that it ended the same way.
Well, hey, I guess that's Rock 100. We're done.
Now that was interesting, but next up, I made a video about testing Venus flytraps against tons of insects. Find out which Venus flytraps like the most, and the results might surprise you. If a black widow walked into a Venus flytrap, what would happen? Would the trap close on top of the spider and eat it whole? Or would the black widow be able to use its venom to squeeze its way out? Well, I'm gonna be testing just that, along with tons of other insect types to see how strong Venus flytraps really are. Now, to get a Venus flytrap, you gotta of course buy one online, and so I found this website. There was two different options of stuff to buy: a cheap $10 Venus flytrap bundle and an expensive $100 bundle. Oh, this is actually perfect. I think I'm gonna buy both of these trap bundles. Then I'll be able to test the cheap and expensive traps to see which will be more effective at catching insects. So hey, I guess let me just check them out. And thankfully, only a couple days later, I got the traps delivered in the mail. After taking them out, I separated them into cheap and expensive. You can see the cheap Venus flytraps actually gave me quite a lot for just $10. And the traps themselves did look pretty healthy, big, and had that signature green and red color. Nice. However, over on the expensive side, you can see these are a bit different. They're not even packaged at all, and they look way more natural with moss all around the dirt. However, the main difference in these ones is that they're basically fully red. Like, they literally look like an apple. I've never seen Venus flytraps like that. But other than that, these traps mostly look the same, and hopefully at least one of them will be able to successfully trap a black widow. But before we test the black widow, we also got some other insects to test, starting with a fly.
And thankfully, I'm a weird bug guy, so I just got a container of a bunch of flies, which might actually mostly be dead, but I think some are alive in there.
First of all, let's get the plants in their testing chambers, and we'll be testing the strength of the cheap $10 traps first. Without wasting any time, I just put in a single fly and put 30 minutes on the clock. And if it gets caught before the timer's up, I'll add in some more flies. But instantly, as you can see, the fly started to climb along the glass to try and escape. Thankfully though, I've sealed this enclosure shut, and once the fly realized that, he ended up going back down to the floor. Now this is where things get interesting, because the fly landed on one of the pots with all of the Venus flytrap plants. What makes Venus flytraps so effective is actually their nectar. Just like normal flowers, these traps also produce nectar around this little green lip part of the plant. And basically what it's designed to do is lure hungry insects in, and while they're eating the plant, of course, it shuts. But I guess because these plants are so cheap, they didn't have very much of that nectar, because after standing around for like a minute, the fly just flew away without even stepping in any of the jaws. And from there on out, the fly basically drained the 30-minute timer down all the way to 3 minutes by just standing on the glass. However, eventually he decided to explore near the cheap Venus flytraps once again. And this time he got a little bit too close, because he stepped onto one of the traps and it could literally close on him right now. But the trap took a second too long, and the fly was able to fly out once it sensed the movement. You see, Venus flytraps have a very interesting system for how they detect prey and activate their jaws, which I'll go more in depth with when the trap actually traps an insect. For now, the fly just sort of walked around on the dirt for the rest of the timer, and well, the cheap trap was a fail. Thankfully, over on the right, we got the expensive one though, worth 10 times more, and this should have a much better result. So I put in a new fly, and let's get the timer started to see how quickly this guy gets caught. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this fly was a bit crazier than that first one, because for the first 3 minutes, he literally just flew around the entire enclosure like he was insane, just hitting all the glass trying to escape. But after he tired himself out, it was time for the Venus flytraps to do their thing. Instantly, you can tell the fly was way more drawn to the traps, as these expensive ones have a much stronger, more smelly nectar. And that was proven because right after, the fly walked in one of the traps. But quickly, it walked out right as the trap closed. Yeah, you can see in this instant replay, the trap may have missed the fly, but comparing the cheap and expensive traps, the expensive one closes way faster. And only a minute later, the fly was still chilling near the traps. And this time, the nectar caught him off guard, because he walked onto the trap and put his face straight up to the lip of the plant where it was. And well, yeah, the video is paused right now, but you could probably tell what's about to happen. Just like that, the trap got a perfect close on the fly. You see, every single Venus flytrap has these super tiny trigger hairs inside of the jaws. And when a bug or something touches more than 2 of them, the trap starts to close. And these expensive ones are able to close so quickly that they catch most of the prey that steps inside. You can see slight bits of movement inside over the next 20 minutes, but over the next few days, the trap is going to release a type of acid on the fly to digest it down and grow even stronger. Well, it only took 5 minutes for that to trap the fly, and the cheap one didn't catch any. So the expensive one definitely takes home the win, and I think I'm gonna have to rate him a 3 out of 10 for how entertaining it was to watch. And I just say that because the next 2 insects should be way more interesting, especially the Black Widow. I have no idea what's gonna happen with that. Anyways, second up, up though, we got crickets to test. Thankfully, crickets can't fly or climb glass, so they should be way easier to catch. And after letting one loose in the cheap enclosure, I put 30 minutes on the clock. Let's see what happens. Now, for the first little while, the cricket spent most of its time just walking on the dirt along the side of the glass to, of course, try and find an escape. Because let's be real, every cricket that sees me on this channel knows it's about to get eaten. He did not want to be in here. But after 5 minutes, he made his first approach to the traps. And one thing I should probably say is that the crickets are way more attracted to nectar, as it's a primary part in their diet. And that was shown because soon after, the cricket started to climb on the outside of the jaws of this trap. And right after that, I actually realized the cricket had stepped inside one of the traps, and it sort of looked like it was drinking nectar. But hello, Venus flytrap, there's a cricket standing inside of you right now. Are you gonna close? Yeah, the cricket really just stood there for 30 seconds, and when it was finished drinking the nectar, it started to walk out, and then finally the trap closed. Good job, bro. You were only a minute late at closing. I guess the cricket must have just not hit a trigger hair inside until the very end, which is why that happened. Anyways, nothing really new happened up until 15 minutes left on the clock, when I decided I wanted to add in 3 more crickets to make this more interesting. And while these guys all ran around the enclosure, I closely watched them to see if any would step inside any of the traps. And at 5 minutes left, this happened. You see, this cricket started to walk up the stem of this trap. Then he walked inside, realized it was a dead end, and tried to turn around. But it was too late because the trap closed on him, leaving him half stuck inside. So I literally just got some time-lapse footage of this guy to see if he'd be able to escape. And actually, while I was recording that, another cricket below also stepped into one of the traps. And he also got half of his body stuck inside. Thankfully, this cricket was able to use some of the stuff around him to pry himself out of the trap. However, I don't know if this guy will be able to do the same, since he's in the air and has nothing to grab onto. So I guess I'll just leave you here. Sorry, boy. Good luck. But anyways, that concludes the timer, and I would call this a half success for the cheap plants this time. But oh boy, am I excited to do this with the expensive traps. I didn't want to waste any time, so I put in one.
Nope. Dunk City Dynasty. Play free now.
Cricket. And this time the cricket instantly walked towards the traps, like within a couple seconds. And he started to just play with his life, because he would just be walking through the plants like this, narrowly escaping the insane speed of these expensive Venus flytraps. Now, only a few minutes later, the cricket once again walked into a Venus flytrap. This time he managed to dodge all the trigger hairs, and he put his mouth up to the lip of the plant to drink some nectar. But yeah, the second he started moving again, he wasn't so lucky, because the trap got an absolutely perfect close on him. And well, it only took 7 minutes for the expensive traps to fully capture a cricket. So once again, I'm gonna have to give the win to expensive. And I think I'm gonna rate that a 6 out of 10 for entertainment, because way more traps closed, which was fun to watch. But you already know what time it is. It is a Black Widow o'clock. Yeah, it's time to test the Black Widows now.
Now, I've never actually just seen a Black Widow walking around where I live. I don't know why. I guess they just don't have them here in my state.
So the only way to get one was to get out the laptop and find a website selling them. I ended up finding a good listing on this website, so I bought some, and the next day they got delivered to my house. As you can see, I bought a pretty good amount of these guys, and as you can probably also see, they're super creepy. They got that signature glossy black color, a massive abdomen, and of course, they got the red hourglasses on the back of that abdomen to let you know they're extremely venomous. In fact, something I just learned about